All right, it's good to see you this morning. It's Friday. We're going to get a little break from the 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. And not that we need a break from this, because I could do this every day, all day. And hopefully one day we get to that point where we can do extended stuff. And, right now we're just trying to help the school system a little bit and just trying to be there for these kids. We just don't understand. I'm telling you, if you had mom and dad at the house and they may have got on you, they may have tried to discipline you, whatever. You just don't realize how blessed you are if you had mom and dad. All right, it's good to see you this morning. It's Friday. We're going to get a little break from the 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. And not that we need a break from this, because I could do this every day, all day. And hopefully one day we get to that point where we can do extended stuff. And, right now we're just trying to help the school system a little bit and just trying to be there for these kids. We just don't understand. I'm telling you, if you had mom and dad at the house and they may have got on you, they may have tried to discipline you, whatever. You just don't realize how blessed you are if you had mom and dad. And a lot of these kids don't have that. Lots of kids, the mom and dad they do have, there's lots of things going on. So keep those kids in your prayer. It's good to see you this morning, Biff. Good to see everybody. You guys have, I launch in some mornings, but Karen Midkiff, Biff Yeager, Maureen, Stephanie, Butch and Pam, all you guys, man, if it wasn't for you all, there's no way. Why would I sit here and do this? Because I can talk to Jesus driving down the road, right? And I still do, right? I hope we all do. But at the end of the day, we stop and think about, just how quick life's going down the road. And sometimes I get into these lessons and I start rushing when I should slow down probably. And I was thinking about that, about the class today, is just slowing down. Because algebra is one of those things, I think a lot of teachers talk fast when they're explaining a problem and people just lose track of it. Well, I'm a slow talker, right? So I think that is a benefit to the kids. So we will see by the time the year's out or whatever happens. I don't know. I don't know how long I'll be here because, I get into different projects and I have to leave from time to time. So we definitely pray for your cousin, man. We hate to hear that about cancer. Lots of good things are happening as far as curing cancer and helping with cancer. But, man, at the same time, it's still getting a lot of people. So we'll definitely be praying for her, Terry. And make sure you did post it here so everybody will see it. We are into the letters that Jesus has John dictate and send out to the 7 churches. And as we've talked about this week, it could be a symbolic church, meaning that, these are just characteristics that, hey, it's not the actual church that, so-and-so got. But now, if you were the church of Ephesus, Smyrna, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea, and you got a letter, of course, it's specific to what's going on in your time frame. But at the same time, everything that's happening in the Bible, it says there in the book of Ecclesiastes that King Solomon wrote, he said, there's no new sin out here, okay? So the same things that were happening at the beginning of the church, they're still happening in the church. And just as important as it was to identify false teachers and people teaching the wrong doctrine, it's just as important today. And that's why we have thousands of denominations versus one church with one mind and one accord. So anyway, I know that's going to excite a bunch of people this morning when you start attacking where they have their hope in. And their hope is in their denomination. Lots of groups identify, and I'm not even going to get into it. I'm not even going to mention the name of different groups that say, I'm an XYZ, and I'm a this, and I'm a that. Listen, you need to be a Christian. That is Christ-like. You need to be born again. Born again in what? In the eyes of Jesus and in the eyes of God. And understand that you are going to go see Jesus one day if you belong to Jesus. Just because you belong to the Methodist church, the Baptist church, the Catholic church, the whatever church, that doesn't guarantee you anything. So please be careful as we think about all these different things. All right, Benita, great to see you. Paula, she's in pain today. Oh, gosh. Yeah, probably favoring the other things, trying to, once again, we start favoring one thing and then something else develops some pain. So we'll be praying for Paula, be praying for your brother there to be able to hang in there, because I know those two like to get out and get on the road. So I know they've kind of, heart attack can slow you down for certain. And thankfully, it looks like she's recuperating. It's just to that point now where everything else is hurting. So we'll be praying for her. Maureen, Glenn, good to see you guys this morning. We are in what? I think we're in the third chapter today. We got through Thyatira yesterday, which was, the Jezebel, the false teacher. And once again, some people will fight you to the death. A woman shouldn't be a preacher. A woman shouldn't teach men in Sunday school. But I'm going to tell you something right now. Men, as men, have failed so miserably in society today, that if God calls a woman to do something, the only not the only reason, but there's many reasons. Mary Magdalene had a place in early church. Mary Magdalene, was a witness. She was no doubt a Sunday school teacher somewhere, right? Why? Because she had a firsthand account of all the things that Jesus had done for her, right? So good morning, Pam and Butch. Good morning, Tony Smith and Vanessa. So listen, God calls you to do something. Man should never slow you down. Society calls you to do something. If it's contrary to God's rules and laws, you should not do it. And that's going to be a hard one as we get closer to the tribulation period. As we get closer to the rapture of the church, we are going to see crazy things, just like right now. Lots of states took on the abortion thing, and because the Supreme Court overruled or did whatever they did, it made it possible that the states could enact their own laws and say there's no more abortion. Well, for 40 years, everybody had gone by the fact that you were allowed to do abortions. So we had, 40 million abortions. Well, now the law has changed, but people said, we're not following the law. We don't care what the law says. Once again, it goes back to law and order in society. So I'm not going to preach that message because you and I get into it all the time. And, the bottom line is, listen, if you're a woman and God's calling you to do something, you do it. You're never going to get in trouble for doing too much for Jesus Christ. Be faithful over a few things. I'll make you ruler over many, right? So just be thinking. So let's go to the third chapter of Revelation and see what this letter says. This goes to the church in Sardis. And the angel of the church in Sardis write this: These things saith he that hath the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest and art dead. Right? So, once again, to be honest with you, there's a couple things that I need help with right here, that I have to look at our footnotes on, because it says, be watchful and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die. For I have not found thy works perfect before God. So once again, what's it say? I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest and art dead. So I don't even understand that. So let me just see what's going on here. It says, as the glory of the city of Sardis was mostly in the past, so the church there was virtually dead in spirit and works, and is representative of the dead orthodoxy. Now, in my definition of the orthodoxy is, there's certain standards in your church. There's certain things as a Christian we must believe. We better believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We better believe he was born of a virgin. We better believe that he can forgive the sins of the world. Because if we don't believe those things, there's no way that we can get saved. And without faith, it's impossible to please God. And without showing God our faith and growing our faith, then our works, or our faith without works is going to be dead. So there's where we're going with that. So he just comes right off the bat and he says, I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest You know, your name used to be great. Your city used to be great. There used to be all these things, but your greatness is behind you. In general, today, could we say this about the church? A lot of people fight you over this, right? And once again, am I trying to discourage you from church? Absolutely not. You better find the right church, because you're never going to get stronger. You're never going to grow in Jesus Christ. But if we're going to church together and there's 50 of us there and 25 get mad at the other 25, and you go start another church 2 miles down the road, have we helped Jesus or have we hurt Jesus? Right? Now, I can go either way on that. I can say, well, you know, if it wasn't working and people couldn't get along, you're better off to prune the tree and just branch it out and go on. So there may be some arguments for that, but you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that since Jesus set the church up to be in one mind with one accord, meaning there's one doctrine, there's one thing to do, and that is be so much of a light to other people that they see your light and say, man, I want that joy that's in Pam Ferguson's life. I want that joy that's in Benita and Myrtle and Stephanie and Maureen and Tony and Terry. I want that joy. Now, if I said something this morning about your joy and you're like, man, I don't really have any joy, that's part of being the light. See, because the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5:22 and 5:23 tell me this. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, meekness, gentleness. Against such there is no law. So see that fruit of the Spirit. What's the Spirit? Spirit of God. Where's the Spirit of God? Living inside of the believer. What's the believer's job? To be the light of the world, Jesus said. So once again, I can't hardly be the light of the world when I say, Pam, you and Butch, get out of here. You know, I don't like, you picked red carpet, and we don't want red carpet in the sanctuary. So y'all just, if you don't like when I'm the boss, I'm the superintendent, I'm the preacher, I'm the whatever, if y'all don't like it, just go somewhere else. Jesus is nowhere in that, right? But it happens all the time. And you think I'm kidding, but I'm really not. Man, you get into picking things for the church, the color of something, the color of the new siding for the new building, the amplifying system for the whatever, you know. Or then it just goes the other way where you say, well, I'm going to let the preacher do it all. So anyway, I'm going to march on. So be watchful and strengthen things which remain. See, it's always, let me share with you in verse 2. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain. Remain and remnant probably are kind of associated together, okay? Everybody is not saved. It's not God's plan that any would perish, right? But everybody's not saved. But those that remain, the remnant of people that are going to stay with Jesus Christ, here's what Jesus says. For the remnant which remain that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before God. So your work has not been perfect, okay? But look, there's some positives here and there's some negatives. I guarantee if Jesus laid my life out here for you today, there'd be some positives. But Jesus would say, Lunsford, I still have somewhat against thee because you really could do more. You really know you should be over here doing this and you really should be doing that. So these things, you know, they speak to us. So it says the godly believing remnant who are worthy should strengthen the things which remain. Have you ever been in a church where there's about 4 or 5 left that are trying to do the things of Jesus? Man, it's hard, right? Because they were passive and they allowed things to happen in the church. They accepted people to preach that maybe weren't qualified or that had their own agenda or wanted to change the doctrine of the church into something that they made or they heard somewhere else and they brought in. And now all of a sudden you're left there and it's just you and a few. Jesus is saying, look, you don't get extra credit just because you're the last one, because you still have a job to do and you still have to find a way to pick up speed on this thing and get where you need to be. So pretty powerful stuff, isn't it? So it's both negative and positive in what he's saying. So the rest should remember the sound teaching that had been received from the apostles. So Jesus is saying, look, you've heard the teaching, hold on to that and move forward as best you can and repent from your deadness and your faithlessness and get back in the game for Jesus Christ, because in Jesus' coming judgment, which can occur at any time, just like for you and I today, okay? Because remember, Jesus will come like a thief in the night. So because of all this stuff, man, I got to be ready. I got to be doing something for the cause of Jesus Christ. So he said, thou hast a few names, even in Sardis, which have not been defiled, right? They shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy. See, it is no different than when Abraham was wrestling with the angel of the Lord about going to Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham knew 50 righteous people weren't down there. So he starts bargaining down, and I don't know, was it to 10? And he said, and the angel of the Lord said, yeah, if there's 10 righteous people there, I will spare the whole city. See, sometimes your community, your area, your church, things get spared because one or two people are doing the things God wants done. Now, does that mean that I'm going to be contagious if I'm doing the right things for Jesus and all the people that associate with me are going to go to heaven by association? It doesn't mean that at all, does it? So if we stop and look at this, all of a sudden, man, I better get rid of my faithlessness. I better get back where I need to go, because the thing is, Jesus is saying, you can walk in white with me and you can be worthy of everlasting life. But at the point that you're at right now, you got to get back from being a dead person or a faithless person. You got to recommit yourself to the teachings that you've heard. See, that's why we go through the Bible every day. That's why I don't try to come up with something new, or I don't go out and preach a message and say, I'm going to read you one verse and then I'm going to tell you what I think. Because if I do that, and I guess that's probably why my preaching career has never really gone anywhere. I don't have a fancy story to tell you, because when I start reading this Bible, everything else fades away. My story fades away. I might be able to tell you something that might jog your memory on something or whatever. But for the most part, when I start reading this Bible doesn't need any help to come alive for you. And that's what Jesus said here. He says, look, you've heard this. You got away from it. Then there's many different reasons and ways you got away. But now the deal is, if you come back, here's what's going to happen. You'll walk with me in a robe of white in a place where the day will never end. No more tears, no more sorrow, and no more pain. Do you want to be there? I want to be there. Absolutely. Right? Okay. He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot his name out of the book of life. Now, I say this all the time. And after just reading this, I better quit saying that God won't erase your name out of the Lamb's Book of Life. Because I say, well, if you had a bad day today, God's not sitting there with an eraser. But according to this verse right here, he says, I will not blot your name out of the book of life if you will repent and come back to me. He says, but I will confess your name before Jesus, or before the Father, and before his angels. He that has an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. So if you'll come back, I'm going to lean over to the Father and I'm going to say, hey, Brooke Lunsford came back today. He was out like that lost son, but he came to himself and he came back. See, I don't know where you're at today. I don't know where your kids are at. Man, you may be disappointed in them. You may have been, you may have not treated them the best because they made some bad decisions, and you chose the discipline route, which you've got to have discipline. Spare the rod, spoil the child. And I'm not talking about beating somebody necessarily, but I'm talking about there's got to be a repercussion. Is that the right word for somebody that does something? There's got to be consequences. We're in a society where, you just don't understand Johnny and how he was raised. Well, if we continue to let Johnny get away with highway robbery, Johnny is going to go into a society that does not care about Johnny. He is going to make bad decisions that may get him killed. And then the despair. I saw another college athlete yesterday that died. I don't know if it's suicide or what. How come superstar college athletes die? They die because their glory was their high school and their college careers. They didn't prepare for a life in the workforce. They were all told you're going to be in the NBA or the NFL or the Major League Baseball, and they never prepared. Nobody ever sat them down and said, look, you need some life skills to be able to survive, because the world is going to devour you, because just like the devil comes at everybody and everything, you better be prepared. And nobody wants to be prepared, right? Oh, I'm going to be the one that makes it. You know, there's hundreds of thousands of people in little league sports today. A very small percentage of them will ever sign a professional contract. And just because you sign a professional contract, if you run the research down on this, you're going to find out that most of the professional athletes end up broke because they thought the money would come in forever. Sometimes you get a windfall. You know, maybe you hit the lottery. Maybe you've done something. Folks, anytime you're in something and you start spending your principal, you're going to have problems, right? So that's another lesson for another day. All right, let me launch on into the church in Philadelphia. We know Philadelphia from the Philadelphia Phillies, from the Philadelphia Eagles. Every time you hear that some team from Philadelphia mentioned on TV, what do they call Philadelphia? The city of brotherly love. So let's see what in the world is going on in the city of brotherly love. It says, to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that has the key of David, and he that openeth, and no man shutteth, and no man openeth. Now this is important here, because this is even a little bit more different. This is a little different than what we have read, because look, there's going to be a door that's going to open for you to get to heaven. Revelation 3:20, Jesus said, I stand at that door and I knock. If you'll open the door, I will come into you and I will sup with you, or I will have a relationship with you. I'll sit down. We'll talk this thing through. You'll come out as a new creature in Christ, right? So Noah got on the ark. God shut the door. People clawed at that door. You can only imagine the shrieks and the howls and the sorrow when people realized they were dying, right? Now, what's going on? It says, these things are he that is holy, he that is true, he that has the key of David, he that openeth and no man shuts, and shuts and no man opens. That's your Jesus today. See, Jesus is sealing us off in so many ways. Man, he's keeping the evil off of us because of the restraining ministry of the Holy Spirit that is in the world today that will leave here when the church leaves at the rapture, right? Check out 1st and 2nd Thessalonians for a look at that. He says, I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but they do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. See, you're going to know in a church, you're going to know that Jesus loves you, and you're going to face persecution. And one of these days, I think it's Psalm 23, your enemies will watch you be honored by God, according to the 23rd Psalm that King David wrote. So don't worry about repaying the people that have hurt your feelings. Don't worry about repaying somebody that you think deserves something. Don't worry about repaying somebody that you heard from somebody who heard it from somebody else that this person is evil, right? This is why we don't have vigilante justice, right? This is why Satan is using the court system, and he's using all the layers of protection that freedom brings in order to orchestrate his program. Are you with me? So that's kind of where we're at in this thing. So behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan. Look here, these people which are Jews and are not, but do lie. So there's a lot of lying going on around there, right? There's a lot of temptation to do the wrong thing. So nonetheless, we've got to really be careful with all these things. The reference to the key of David is taken from Isaiah chapter 22:22, where it relates to the Masonic authority that Jesus has. Jesus is the Messiah. When Jesus has the key of David, David was told his kingdom would last forever. So the open door, which no man can shut, refers to the opportunity to testify about Jesus, to be of service to Jesus Christ. And the fact is, God's going to open doors in your life, and he's going to shut doors. One of the biggest things about being saved is God is going to shut a lot of doors, because when you start telling your friends that you're running with and you're partying with that you got saved and you would love to talk to them about Jesus, that door is going to shut. How do I know? Because I was there. you know. I've not told you any lies about my career. I owned 2 beer joints when I got saved. Man, how'd you do that? You didn't. And how did I get rid of those? I mean, I thought the day I got saved, how's this going to work, Lord? How's this going to work? You know how it worked? I believed God, and I said, Lord, work it out. And I'm telling you, in a short period, maybe a month or two, it was gone. It was the craziest thing I ever saw. Gone, everything. And I needed a job. So at some points I'm like, man, I hate that this is gone. But in some ways I'm like, what am I going to do? And Biff Yeager's on here, and Biff will tell you where God ended up putting me. I ended up out digging in the dirt in the directional boring business, which is basically trenching in fiber optic cable. So that's how Biff and I met. In Columbus and Cleveland and all of Ohio. We went out over a total of 13 states, and God trusted me. And I'll never remember what Grandma said. God knows what he can trust you with. God had me digging in the dirt. So I go from a guy that owns 2 businesses and thinks, I'm a hot shot business guy, and I had some pretty good success in my 20s. Now all of a sudden, guess what I am? I'm digging in the dirt. And you ought to have seen us at the end of the day. Number one, it was my brother. And what's so funny, Pam and Butch, another member of our first team was Matt Thompson, our Sunday school teacher at Salt Rock Community Church. So can you imagine what God was thinking when we showed up out in Columbus, Ohio, in November? It was November, and Columbus is flat. For those that don't hang out there, Myrtle, tell us how flat Circleville and Columbus are. The breeze is always blowing, and when that breeze is cold, it can get cold quick. And then Biff was working in Cleveland. That's where we ended up. But anyway, can you imagine what God was thinking when the 3 of us are out there with the shovel and we're digging in the dirt? And I was kind of heavy set like I am. I never was thin, right? So we're out there digging in the dirt. Can you imagine how God is sitting there in heaven with his arms crossed like this, and him and Jesus are sitting there saying, boys, we're getting these 3 ready for something. Because, see, I had just gotten saved. So, I don't know anything about teaching Sunday school. In fact, the first time Chester Bragg mentioned it to me, I about fell on the floor. My knees went weak. And I'm like, listen, I didn't get saved to do anything in church. I got saved just to get out of hell. And, it doesn't matter how my relationship started with Jesus, but look where it's at now. Now, Pam and Butch can tell you, Matt Thompson is as good a Sunday school teacher as you've ever seen. Matt Thompson was incredibly crazy when I met him, right? But he was a hard worker. Number one, Jesus is looking for hard workers. That's why he picked fishermen. That was a hard job. The second thing is, Matthew can be a little bit obnoxious. Matthew's a little bit loud, right? But God used that in a positive way. Greg Lunsford today is the pastor of Beulah Ann Baptist Church in Ona, West Virginia. Big old church, full-time pastor, working every single day for the Lord. Look at us. We've got a Sunday school class that's going here, and Biff and I are still together after all these years, Biff and I even did a few jobs there, 3 or 4 years ago. So once again, when God looks down at what we're doing, God's seeing way out around the corner with us, you see. Yeah, I should probably mention that about Matthew in church sometimes, but, I don't want to stand up and brag on myself, but, I was involved in that a little bit. But many times I would sit on that machine because my job was operating the machine. And I'd be pushing and drilling this pipe. If you've ever seen a directional boring machine, I'll try to share a picture with you a little bit later. So I'm sitting there on this machine all day, and Matt and Brad Bays, it's Larry Bays' son, if you know anything about Lincoln County Schools. Larry Bays was on the board, and he was a teacher at the CTE and stuff. So all these things are going on, But God is looking down and saying, look at them boys with that shovel. And that's all I can ever think about, because I'm sitting on that machine. I'm like, Lord, is this all there's ever going to be, is me sitting on this machine, right? Am all I'm going to do is dig in this dirt? And if God would have answered me right then, God would have said, well, here's what you got to do. You got to be faithful over a few things, and then I'll make you ruler over many. And if you can't dig in the dirt and do something as simple as that, what else could you do? And that makes me think a lot of times. So anyway, I probably should, Pam, if I forget Sunday. I think I got to take Macy to a college this weekend, but I do need to tell. It's not a story, it's a reality. But I often think about just how God worked at. And then we went on to Cleveland, and that's where we met Biff. And Biff was he was a special part of the team, even though he was really our boss. Biff was part of the team because he's a West Virginia guy, not saying you got to be from West Virginia to be on Jesus' team, But anyway, I transgress. I get to squirrel moments. I bounce from things to thing. It's 7:24. I got to roll in here and see what these kids are doing. You guys, the weather has changed. I didn't want it to be this drastic, but that's what we get. So let's hang in there. Let's have a great day. We hope to see you Monday morning, and we'll continue with the next verse. So remember, individually is how we get to heaven. Our church is not going to get us there. Our denomination, not going to get us there. All the good works in the world is not going to get us there. I can't save myself, because if I did or could, I'd be bragging on myself, right? So again, we got to really bear down on this thing. We got to really understand God's in control. God's given us space to repent. God's got a master plan. I want to be in the white robe in his presence forever and ever when I leave this world. And I hope you want that same thing. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.